Welcome to the podcast. Cory Palm, Tanner Lipsett, head coach Tony Ersland coming to you for the first of a couple postseason versions of the podcast. Guys, it's been a month of Sunday since I've seen you since we've launched one of these. Been a long, strange year, but we are finally glad that it is finally March and we can get to what really matters here in the postseason. Tony, good to see you, Tanner. Good to see you as always, Coach. As we head to Big Tens this week, what are your thoughts overall on where the team's at?
Yeah, I mean, right. It's been a tough year and a bit of a roller coaster ride with so many freshmen in the lineup, but then some really outstanding individual performances as well. So, really, I mean, it's one of optimism that we've got some kids who have really excelled and that are on the doorstep of accomplishing some great things. And I do think our freshmen, it's been a long year for some of those guys, but full of experiences, both good and bad, that they can draw on now, and that hopefully we see payoff. Not all losses are just negative, experiences, right? You can be used to grow and develop and be pushed in so many ways, and that's the way I want to look at this. Is yes, it's been tough from them learning to be pushed and grow, but man, they've looked good here in our training going in, and I think they've developed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's been interesting, Cory. I know our comms contact, William Soule, put out a stat. We had the most starts during the Big Ten dual season, most freshman starts of any team in the conference, which in our locker room, that's not really a big surprise.
Yeah.
But it's definitely made for some trying times. I've had to keep Coach Ersland's wheels on the tracks here and there during the season. But
yeah.
No, it's interesting. You look at the fact that, like, I think one of the exercises that I did that put some things in perspective were I went back over the last 8-9 years and I pulled the records of all our freshman starters. And with the exception of maybe Kendall Coleman as a redshirt freshman, a lot of guys who did a lot of special things had first years that looked a lot like our freshmen this year. So, just keep grinding. We've been here before, and we've accomplished a lot from a lot of those kids.
Yeah, we've been here before. We've just never had so many of them at one time, right? I mean, that was the thing where, as Tanner mentioned, talking me off a ledge here and there, as far as what we saw out in a dual meet maybe, and being like, wow, we've got to fix some things. It just was a lot of young people out there, but at the same time, like I said, I've really seen some growth as we've trained these last 2 weeks, getting ready to go into Big Tens. Some guys have really elevated themselves. They look like they're as dialed in as ever. Their energy is good. Their focus is good, and they're not as much freshmen anymore as they were, right? They're more battle tested. And so I'm pretty excited to see them kind of want to test themselves in a tournament like the Big Ten.
Yeah, to grab a couple more notes that William provided me this morning, 6 freshmen going to their first Big Ten championships this weekend. That's more than anybody in the field. And you've had 10 freshmen in the dual lineup at some point this year, which is the whole lineup. When you look at it that way, 10.
There's 10 weights. It's in case
10 weight classes.
Yes.
It's crazy. You need both hands. And Tanner's starting to take off his feet or take off his shoes if you wrestle another freshman, Coach.
Yeah. It's wild when you think in terms of how many freshmen we ran out there. It really is. But again, we're here now, right? And there's no looking back. It's only looking forward and what can we do and how can we use these experiences to be in the moment and perform well. And that's all we're focused on is kind of what are we going to do? It's about us. Everybody's 0-0, right? You get postseason. Before doesn't matter, and we got to be where our feet are, and we got to focus on what we got to do right now.
Tony, one of the things that I've been impressed with about the group, specifically when you talk about the freshmen, despite some of the ups and downs they've gone through, I really feel like the group has stayed very positive and optimistic about the overall picture of where they are and where they're going and what we're doing. As a head coach, how does that, I guess, how have you instilled that in them, and how does that continue to affect things going forward?
Yeah, I think I really look at that coming from a mindset of it's not just about right now. It's always about what's to come. You know what I mean? And you got to be hopeful, right? Like everything's got to start for, hey, we're going to be better in the future because we're going to keep working hard. We're going to keep learning. We're going to keep doing the right things. And so you have that look to tomorrow, like, hey, think we're going in the right direction and things will improve, even though right now we didn't get what we want. And the other thing is, the way I really looked at this group this year too, and it's not just about 3 days in March, although we really covet those 3 days, right? Like their kids are going to realize their dreams, but it's about what is your culture and your program going to look like in the future, right? It's about getting these young men to grow up, think, compete, and train how it's going to serve them best in the future, right? Creating that for the program is also a big deal. So you look at it two ways. You know that you got to do the right things to be better tomorrow. And you know that, hey, I need to create a culture that's going to help keep this program going where it's been and where it needs to go in terms of collecting postseason honors.
For sure. Speaking of the postseason, we ship out tomorrow to tropical Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now a little history lesson. This is before you were the head coach here, Tony. But the last time we were in Michigan, the Boilermakers had a pretty good showing. It was one of our. In fact, it was the best showing that the program had until our fifth place finish 2 years ago. So some good karma in Chrysler Center for the Boilermakers that hopefully we can tap back into that.
Absolutely. We'll take all the good karma along with our hard work that we've put in now as well. A little good vibe never hurt anybody.
Not at all. I guess start with the top seeded guys. Let's dig into the championships a little bit more, dig into the roster. A pair of guys seated third at their respective weights, and could have made legit arguments to put them a little higher if
Yep.
Matt Ramos at 125 pounds and Kendall Coleman at 157 pounds. Starting with Matty, talk a little bit about his season and what we're looking for as we come into these next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's had a heck of a year, with only the loss to Spencer Lee in the Big Ten season. He has, as you mentioned before, kind of alluded to it, a legitimate gripe. Maybe gripe's not the right word, but a legitimate reason to think he's the 2 seed. And I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how the points came out. Seeds can still change. If you're within 3 points, there can be arguments made and seeds can move. And so I'll be interested to see how the points came out, because him and Cronin did not face each other. Cronin did not compete in the duel. We did. And so it wasn't because we had taken a loss. It's just simply we didn't see each other. You know what I mean? And so, but I feel really good no matter who he's in front of, that Matt has been great about wrestling his match all year long. You know what you're going to get from him. And that makes, as a coach, you're not guessing. You know what you're going to get. And you're going to be in the match. And so I feel really good about where he's at against anybody. So
that's like a warm blanket, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I mean, there's no better feeling than consistency for a coach when he sends his guy out to know, hey, this is what we're going to see and this is what's going to happen. This is where we're going to wrestle from. When you have a really good idea of that, you feel really good, and so Matt's put himself in that spot, and we expect he'll keep it going like he has all year. Kendall, again, the 3 did not see the Penn State athlete who's the 2. We did have one hiccup in there, I'll say, kind of a controversial loss at Wisconsin when we lost on a neutral zone, kind of danger count, right? It was a takedown that wasn't even, in my mind, really a takedown, to tell you the truth. The athlete never secured control. So that one's a little strange. But again, Kendall has had a tremendous year with some big wins. and no reason to think he won't do anything but what he's done all year, go out and get after people and go get his points. He's dangerous, right? He just because the stuff he has, he's very dangerous, and people respect him when they go out. You see, they don't want to wrestle quite as much as they do. They want to slow it down and hold position and try to keep it to a 1-point match. And but man, Kendall's in shape and looking good. So I'm excited to watch him mix it up with these kids.
In the case of both Ramos and Coleman, we talked about the fact that they didn't see this person or they didn't get to wrestle that person. I felt like this year, above many others recently, that the schedule at different weights kind of really made some of the weights tough to seed, because you got a guy like Levi Haynes who was undefeated in the conference but didn't wrestle against Peyton Robb, didn't wrestle Kendall Coleman, didn't wrestle Saldate, and then Saldate, same thing, didn't wrestle any of those. His only loss was he lost to Gil out at Reno, and then he lost to to Peyton Robb, but didn't see a bunch of other guys in the field. And so I feel like every year the Big Ten gets a little bit harder to seed as we look at those sheets because of 14 teams with 8 or 9 duels, and you're trying to match up things that aren't necessarily equal.
For sure. And I think I don't know that there's a good way we solve that, except for you wrestle more Big Ten teams. And honestly, if you look, right, we didn't see Cronin, we didn't see Robb in the duels. We didn't see Tal Shahar. And however you want to think of it, NBA load management, maybe a guy was nicked up here or there. I'm not saying people always legitimately dodge people, but man, there's some times when you just didn't see people and you knew it was to their advantage not to see you again, right? And so how do you fix that? Well, you wrestle more people, but the Big Ten is already such a brutal schedule packed into a short amount of time. We just cut ourselves to pieces. So I don't have a good remedy for that, and that's just the way it is. So you kind of got to live with the way that the chips fall and go wrestle your tail off. You can't cry about it or complain about it. Let's go wrestle. And that's really where we land. You fight hard all regular season long to get here. And now it's just trying to lace them up, put your foot on the line, and let's go settle it.
Yeah, 57 got even crazier when you throw in a guy like Mikey Carr from Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
Who obviously we know he's talented. The guy can wrestle. But he only wrestled 4 matches this year.
1 Big Ten duel, right? That's wild.
No. He had, he wrestled 3 Big Ten duels, but in 2 of the 3, he saw the other guy's backup.
Oh,
so was it? So you know what I mean? He wrestled 3 Big Ten duels, which is as many as some other.
But only against one guy in the field is what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Kobe Seabricht was his only opponent in the field. I can't remember who the other 2 teams were right now, but they both sent out their backup against him.
Right. And then you think too, right. And this is where we talk about how things fall as far as points and how people vote. Personally, if you don't compete a lot, I think you get penalized. That's how I know we looked at it that way, right? If you didn't compete a lot, then we dinged you a bit. Not because we don't like you or think you're not capable, but you just didn't have the resume that other people had. Right. And so we knocked some of those guys down a little bit more. But other coaches may not. They might say, hey, he's got 1 great win, and so he deserves to be here, and that's how he views it. And that's what makes things dicey. There's no hard and fast rules, to seeding. It's sometimes you just got to use your guts and how you think it should be.
Well, and we can see, the proof's in the pudding with what you value this year, not just in, when you're putting in your vote on where people should be seated, but in how you handled your roster. Your top guys, the guys that were in the lineup week in, week out, enter this tournament, enter postseason with the most matches of anybody in the tournament. 26 matches for Ramos is the most of anybody in the field this weekend. Yeah. And Coleman's second with 25. Part of that is, you guys wrestled 3 opens, right? And they both went to the finals multiple times. They went on runs. They got a lot of matches. But you also, when the rubber met the road in late January, early February, and the grind is getting to everyone, you weren't hiding your guys. You were putting them out there. You were saying, let's go. that's sort of what your program, what you value for your program. And I know it's become a national conversation. I've wanted to have this talk, and we probably shouldn't have it on air with both of you. This has been an issue this season, a big old bright spotlight on this issue the last month.
Well, and I was telling Tony this morning, you saw in the EIWA, they made both Pat Glory and Yanni Diakomahalis the 2 seeds at EIWAs, which is kind of like,
that's kind of punishment. Yep.
Yeah. They didn't wrestle a ton. Either one of them. Glory wrestled a bunch of matches up at 33. They are known, proven commodities. Those guys, I mean, there's no doubt. Like, those guys are both the 1 seed in their conference.
Of course.
Like, it's not much of an argument, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know how the EIWA does their seeding. Like the Big Ten, the coaches seed it, right? I don't know if that's how they do their thing per se. But like you said, there has been a value on competing. It hasn't always been consistent.
Yeah.
But there has been a value placed on it. And I am very curious to see how guys like Kendall and Matt get treated for nationals when it comes to the fact of, like, we wrestled all comers. We were out on the mat for everybody that came across us this year. And whether or not that ends up helping or hurting us.
Right. And the funny thing is, right, and we've just talked about how our guys wrestled. So with that in mind, this is actually, from my standpoint, a bit of a pared down schedule too in terms of this. We used to schedule 16 dates. You can go back. I can remember Dylan Leidy, and some other guys back in that class, Bruner, that it was easily 40 some matches. Yep. And so if you look at match counts, they've been declining. And I thought, similarly, let's take a few matches off, wrestle enough to be in shape and see everybody we need to see. But still, we're not sitting 30 matches now with still Big Tens and nationals to go. And then you're at 40, when you're done. And so this still is a bit pared down, but for a lot of people, it's wrestling a lot. 26, Matt's going to be, in the 30s, in there, when he's done. And so some guys won't even get to 30. So it is interesting about where match counts.
Don't get to 20, Tony.
Yeah. There's no doubt. And so what is it that you really need? And what do you value? Right. And that's where this comes into play even more. We really value 3 days in March, which I understand why. I'm a traditionalist at heart too. And when you work as hard as these kids do, to have the chance to be a national champion, All-American, big deal. Big Ten champ means a lot as well. But then does it devalue the duel? And should we as a sport devalue the duel, right? That's a different conversation, because you're pulling guys out, and do you take a dual loss and it's no big deal, right? Like,
that's a whole podcast on its own.
And that's exactly right. We can talk in the postseason about how important is the duel and where should its place be, and how do you emphasize it and grow it? Because when baseball's trying to shorten their games, right, and everybody else is trying to make everything more viewer friendly, okay, duels would seem to be the way to go for our sport. It's 2 hours. People can get into the rivalry aspect of it. They'll come to the arena
versus the team.
Yes, right, and they'll do that. So, and again, I know that's a different deal down the road for us, but it takes you in those directions, which for me are important discussions. Like, we should have those discussions and then make decisions on that.
Another thing that I think is interesting is as we've gotten to know you and the way you run the program here at Purdue, you change what you value a little bit from year to year. When you had the more veteran team a few years ago, you passed on the late December Open. You went to South Beach Duels instead. Sometimes you open the season at Michigan State or at Clarion Open or at Navy. Sometimes you open with, Journeyman Duels instead.
Right.
It's if a team needs more matches, like this year's team with its youth and inexperience, you get more matches and you schedule it that way. That's really cool, but that's intentional. That is, well thought out. You've got reason behind it. It's not, well, I want my guy to get the best seed, so we're going to sit him.
Right. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, you're trying to develop your team, and every team is different. So you are right about that. There's not a hard and fast rule, in terms of that. Every year, your team is different. Even if it's the exact same number of guys, I think I've told you before, they are different. They're a year older, better and worse experiences. Like, there's different things they bring to the table. So to me, you have to adjust with what your team is and make the best decisions you can.
Absolutely. Let's push more into the roster. Parker Phileas, the 8th seed at 141 pounds. That was a crazy one.
Tough weight to seed.
Yeah.
Was it 4 through 11? Is that what we said, Tony? The 4 through 11 seeds was the biggest jumbled round robin of A beat B, who beat C, who beat A, that you could really imagine. It was wild. I even did an exercise. I messed with a couple of the coaches. I switched out the names of the wrestlers for superheroes, and plugged it, like Spider-Man beat Thor and Thor beat the Hulk, and they looked at it and just shook their heads and walked away. They
try seeding then, right? Because at least when you know who the kid is, again, you might fall back on past history, right? There might be some bias, or maybe even hey, he's a former All-American, you know what I mean? And even though he dropped a match here, we forgive him for that. We know he's better. But when you just put superhero names in there like that and you don't know, good luck. I mean, it made your head hurt.
It was wild. So, it was interesting to see the way it played out. I think the good news for us, Tony, is we were pretty comfortable with Parker falling wherever in that mess, because we felt like, even though, yes, he did lose to a couple guys and he beat a couple guys in that whole mess, we felt like pretty much any of those spots would be pretty comfortable for him.
Yeah. Bottom line, Parker's best is good enough. You're right. No matter who he's wrestling, he knows that. He just needs to focus on his process and how he needs to execute, and he will be fine. So that, I think that's well said. We're comfortable with, where he was going to fall, and let's wrestle.
Hayden Kopis, the 10 seed at heavyweight. It was kind of a back and forth deal with he and Tristan Ruhlman. Tristan ended up getting hurt, so Hayden had to step up and man the ship alone, and had a couple nice wins down the stretch to get himself up to the 10 seed. They're going to take 9 at heavyweight, puts him really in the conversation to see if he can snatch a spot to Tulsa.
Yeah, a guy like Kopis, as you just mentioned, he's close, right? I mean, you're talking about a match here or there, it sends you to the national championships. And so he's got a lot to wrestle for. He's right there, as you mentioned. And that was an interesting situation. And injuries were a thing for us this year. We had 2-3 guys out of the lineup routinely because of injuries. And, when Tristan hurt the knee coming back from scuffle and was out, Kopis was ready. And he had been out, right, with some injury before. So thank goodness they didn't overlap, and we were able to at least have some quality people in there for a good majority of the season.
Ben Venadia, another freshman in the lineup. He got the 12 seed at 184 pounds. Again, had a couple Big Ten wins to push himself up a little bit on the board there. Going to go get his first taste of Big Ten action.
Yeah. One of those freshmen when I'm talking about, hey, you like where they're at. He's a guy who's been training well. He looks like he's grown a little bit from this season, and it's tough on everybody. When you've gone from being the best, and winning opens even as a true freshman, but now, hey, you're getting punched in the mouth, so to speak, regularly. It really kind of shows who you are, as a person, and he's stayed with it, and even been able to pick it up here at the end in terms of his focus and his fight and what he's doing. So that's a particular guy I'm talking about when we say, hey, I'm excited to see how they look. Ben fits that mold. He's got the talent, and I know he wants to do well, and he's been working hard for it. So, you want those guys to go out and free themselves up and let it rip. Nothing to lose here. Let's let it rip.
Bunch of our other freshmen down towards the bottom of the seeds, but all very, very capable. Did make a change, 165 and 174. Cooper Norrie and Stoney Buell had been kind of going back and forth at 165 all season. Decided they both need to be in the lineup for Big Ten. So Stoney's going to stay down at 65. Coop's going to go up to 74, they're both going to get in the batter's box and swing and see what they can make happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We thought that Coop, who had been up, at times for us, he's been around a lot, right? Been in a few more matches, kind of proved us he could handle 74. I think, and where Stoney being in the lineup first year was probably more natural fit at 65. So that's why we went that way. And again, man, nothing to lose here. Get in there, be the tough out, and go to work, and keep swinging and see where you land. So that's all I'm looking for with these young guys. Don't give people respect. Don't look at the rankings. Don't look at the numbers. Man, just go out there and get after people. Focus on what you need to do. Be more process oriented and get after them in the ways that you can.
Another one of those funny round robin type seeding situations was at the bottom 133 with Dustin Norris coming out as the 13 seed, but there was he beat Henry Porter from IU, who beat Rayvon Foley, who beat Kyle Berwick, who beat so and so. So there was a kind of a crazy situation there with who beat who and where that ended up. And so with 9 spots at that weight, definitely a shot for just about anybody in that field to find their way on the podium.
There's no doubt. And Norris is kind of not a victim, but suffered in the seeding because of some of his, inconsistent losses, right? Like he has some good wins there. If you look at his record, and Porter being the 11, you were hoping you could maybe get Dustin up in that 11, maybe even 10, 11 spot, but he just had a few inconsistent, losses in there that hurt him and knocked him down a bit. Doesn't stop him from being capable. He's still capable to get where he needs to be, but just from a seeding, and that not uncommon, right? That's why I got all this gray hair. Some of those inconsistent performances from the young guys hurt him in terms of a seeding, a number at the Big Ten championships.
I thought Norris also, you said victim, so I'll just keep using that word. He saw some backups in Big Ten duels. He did not see the starter from Minnesota. He didn't see the starter from Wisconsin. So he, found himself in a position where when they get those Big Ten ballots out, he had fewer matches against the field than some other guys and fewer opportunities for wins and so on and so forth. So now he ended up losing to the guy at Minnesota and beating the kid at Wisconsin. So it made for, if he gets those starters instead and something different happens, who knows, right?
And listen, and that's important for everybody to remember going in, right? It's just a number. You got to make your own luck. And again, it's 0 and 0. You're capable. Focus on what you need to do. I mean, there's examples all over the place. Like, let's talk 57, which is a very deep weight. Brayton Lee started the season number 1. Yep. My man is the 11 seed. Right? And is Brayton capable? Brayton's capable. When we walk out against him, if Kendall sees him, somewhere, be ready, man. Let's be ready to wrestle.
There'll be a lot of respect.
It's just a number, right? Focus on what you got to do to take care of your business. That's the thing. It's easy for people to get hung up on numbers, but it is the Big Ten, and the rubber's going to meet the road early, and you got to be ready to go every round.
It's funny you said 57. I want to say with 13 of the 14 kids were ranked in the final coaches poll of the season.
Crazy.
At that weight. Only ended up with 10 spots, 10 automatic allocation spots. So, that should be a heck of a bracket. Should be a lot of fun to see how that pans out and who ends up with those top 8 spots.
Bet we get a few wild cards there.
I would hope so.
That's the thing that, 10 guys qualify, but man, that battle for 11th and 12th is going to be hot and heavy too.
Oh yeah,
because you've got to put yourself in the best spot for that at-large bid.
There's no doubt you want to be in that one out spot. You know what I mean? Yeah. For sure, because it's a part of the criteria.
Yeah, the fact that they're going to have to wrestle that weight all the way out to 11th place is a little. Yeah, it's not quite 84 from last year, but it's
close.
It's intense for sure.
How did we feel about allocations this year? 10 is the most. Most of the weight classes, it looks like, have 9. 74 has 7. That's a real small number for the Big Ten. Historically, did it felt more equitable, more even across the board? Or did it seem like it was about right?
I thought it was maybe a little low, and not much. I'm not sitting here with like huge complaints that boy we really got robbed, but it did feel a little low to me. You know, I thought we might have had a few more spots, but again, what you wait and see is what's the final number when they do all these wild cards here. You know, in 5-6 days, what's it look like then? Do they hit the number? You know, where we thought?
Yeah,
I thought 33 and 57 were low. Yeah. Those were the two weights in particular that I looked at and was like, and I actually, to be honest with you, I thought we were going to get more at 65 as well.
Yeah.
If you want to throw one more in there for
65 is only 8.
Yeah. And that's where I land. I would have landed at we wanted 3 more spots or deserved 3 more spots.
Total,
yeah. I thought there were some guys in there, and I didn't get too much into the nitty gritty of who did and did not earn bids at that weight. I know that there's people out there that analyze that and break it down and so on and so forth. But I thought there was probably a few more guys that could have earned bids at 165 specifically.
Yep.
I can't believe Big Ten's is here already. I'll tell you that much. It's the postseason is here, and I think these last, Tony, you can speak to this a little bit. The end of the season was a little different from us in the fact that we've had a pretty extended break between our last duel and going to Ann Arbor this weekend.
Yeah. And I've enjoyed it. And now we'll see with final results, what it looks like from a team standpoint too. But personally, I enjoyed it because we got some guys healthier. They got to relax a bit, get some perspective on the season, and then train, right? Like we got a good training cycle again out of it, where sometimes you come out of your last duel, you get a day off, and then, boy, hey, we got to go with no chance to rest your body and kind of get ready for the next push. And this year we got that. And so far, like I said, I've liked the way people have responded. So I'm pretty excited about what the training cycle has been for this group.
That's good to hear.
Short trip for us up to Ann Arbor, just a 4-hour drive that we will take on tomorrow. Coaches meetings, final seeds, brackets determined on Friday, and Saturday it'll be time to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's going to disappear on us quick, right? But final preparations are really in. Tomorrow morning, it's just a short, quick workout, and then let's get packed and get out of here. So it's honest. The hay's in the barn, so to speak. Yep. And like I said, everybody at least looks like they're chomping at the bit. So I expect guys to show up and go after people, and then you see where the chips fall.
Absolutely.
Love it.
A couple quick shout outs to some incoming Boilermakers. As state championships have been happening all over the country, Orlando Cruz and Cole Salome took home Indiana state titles here 2 weeks ago, while Delaney Ruhlman and Ashton Jackson were state runner-up here in Indiana. Those were nice. Grayson Clark picked up a state championship up in Wisconsin this past weekend.
His 4th?
Yeah, it was his 4th. He's a 4-timer in Wisconsin. That's a pretty elite list.
Yeah.
There,
20, I think, would they say 23 in the history of the state of Wisconsin is what he is now? So.
It was at 1A or something like. I think it was the fact that he's in the biggest class as well.
Yeah.
So, and then Joey Blaze is still a few weeks out over in Ohio. They're always very late in the process, but
they are. But
did I see Joey just became? Go ahead, Tony.
Go ahead.
He just became the all-time wins leader at Perrysburg, right?
That's
a heck of a 176 wins right now and counting.
That's a heck of a program to have a record like that.
Yes. Yeah. He's got a little brother. I can't say his little brother's name, so I won't go there. But
could break it.
There you go. So safe. Excited again that we've got a young group that's gonna, like I said, set us up foundation for the next years to come with experience and what this year was, and then we're gonna add to it with some really accomplished, good young kids, and that's got us all excited for the future with seeing what these young men are doing here the last few weeks.
It's been Cory, it's been crazy trying to keep track of the staff as they have gone all over the country to different tournaments. Last weekend, Tony went to California, AJ went to Missouri, Jake went to Wisconsin. Coach Gardner was running workouts here. And then we hosted a kids tournament here locally on Sunday. It's been nuts. So
Kind of nice that Ohio's a little bit late so that you can,
Yeah.
get that off a
It's
little bit.
the week after Big Ten, so at least hey, we're not as much going on, right? We can, and it's close, so we can have practice, get over that night, watch Joey and other guys perform, and
it wasn't like your 24-hour trip to the West Coast.
Oh, buddy, that was brutal, and I can't say names because we were prohibited in how we can talk about kids, but we've got some underclassmen that are doing great things that are coming to Purdue as well. That's got us awfully excited. So, the recruiting we talked about this fall, and as well as it continued now this spring with the state tournaments, it's exciting because we've got a lot of good young men coming in the future too.
That's great to hear. Excited about the future. Excited about the present as well, as we are, hours away at this point from Big Ten championships. The first starts flying at 10 a.m. Session 1 on Saturday up in Ann Arbor. Guys, good luck. Travel safely and compete well. Okay.
Yep. And I really like these graphics here, by the way, Cory. I'm telling you, this is sharp. I'm impressed. So even though we slacked off a little bit this winter when
we were making improvements.
Yes, right? The train.
Big time.
There we go. You guys have upped your game over our break. This is true.
There we go. This is the new standard going forward. We'll do another one of these next week, talk about results. Until then, boiler up.